إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فإنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بالإحسان إلى يوم الدين. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وزد على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين وفي الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My dear brothers and sisters, today I had specifically requested to speak to this audience, particularly because school has almost been out and we go on summer break shortly, and so for a lot of our younger brothers and sisters, this is one of those exciting times of the year when you're about to embark on your summer break. Very exciting, and you're out of school and you get to hang out with your friends more and do lots of fun, exciting things. And for today's topic of the khutbah, I spent a lot of time thinking hard about this one. And in recent times, I've met with a lot of younger folks in their teenage years and formative years, we can call them. And a lot of discussion has been around their understanding of sin, their understanding of good and evil, their understanding of right and wrong. And it's not an easy concept to grasp because we also live in a society where we don't really do things just for the sake of doing them anymore. We follow things because we try to understand them. And we're able to do complex things, and we study calculus and extremely tough sciences in school, and our students and our children are, mashallah, scholars of their sciences. But with Islam, sometimes we don't put that same emphasis in the thought, in the thinking process of what goes into it. Now, to set the context, to lay the groundwork for what we're going to talk about today, is to review a story that every man, woman, and child in this building knows. It's a story of mankind and our origins, our origin story. Now, as we know, Adam alayhi salam, that story that everyone is taught at a young age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates Adam alayhi salam from clay. He creates this creation, a magnificent creation. And then he tells the angels to prostrate, and he tells all of them to, he tells all of his creation to prostrate to him. And we know that the angels obey, but one does not. Iblis does not obey this. And this story, we've heard it so many times, every child could narrate this story to you. But we hear it from a lens where we understand, okay, so Shaitan decided not to do this, and so he was expelled. And this story is in the Quran many, many times. This is just a footnote. When the Quran says something more than once, it's not by accident. There's no duplicates in the Quran. Allah does not repeat himself without reason. That's an emphasis. That's a thought of you think of it in the context of that surah as well. Read it again, understand it again, the emphasis. So the interesting part about this story is we need to now change our perspective. Everyone here, please, with me, look at it from the eyes of Iblis. This story, the same story we know, look at it from Iblis's eyes. He says, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. You created me from fire, and you created him from clay. And you're telling me to bow down to him. Shaitan is deeply offended. Iblis is offended. His ego is hurt. How could you tell me to prostrate to him? He feels wronged. He feels that Allah has wronged him. And that's where this animosity has come from. Iblis was an obedient servant for longer than any of us will ever live. And yet in this moment, he feels like Allah did something incorrect to him. He was incorrectly treated. And so this animosity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, you cannot do this, so then leave. You're expelled. You are cursed. He tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pardon me. Now here comes the revenge aspect of things. He wants vengeance. And then he says, لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. He wants to come to each one of us. He's making a vow. Shaitan is making a promise that I am going to لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ. I'm going to set traps. I'm going to mislead. I'm going to misguide. I'm going to make them think they're doing good things when they're not. I'm going to draw them away from you because you told me to prostrate to this creation. So Bani Adam's destruction is the ultimate goal of Shaitan. This is our source of evil that we can understand. The ultimate destruction, this vengeance that he has, saying, okay, well, they're better than me. This creation is better than I am. And this misleading is something he says he will do until the end of time. He says other phrases. لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. I'm going to sit on the path to Allah. Shaitan says, I'm going to sit on the path. Literally speaking, he says, sit and stop you from coming towards Allah. That is his goal. That's Iblis' objective.
And this topic today, inshallah, we're going to talk about this misguidance that Iblis does, these tricks he plays on us. What is his ultimate goal? It's always to make us obey other than Allah, to make us commit what we hear of shirk, but not perhaps in the sense that we may understand it. To worship, to love, to obey in that divine sense anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, my brothers and sisters, now we go down a little level and we look at the types of sins that we understand in this world. Now, oftentimes there are sins that everyone can understand and agree upon. We get it. We understand. You're not supposed to kill people. That's an easy one. We understand that you cannot kill a person without right. You do not kill children. You do not kill people. That's an understood fact of nature. We understand that. We have no qualms with it. But then sometimes, and many of us, I'm sure, at work or other places, somebody's asked you, you can't drink a drop of alcohol? Why can't you take a sip? You're not getting drunk. You're not going to get drunk off one sip of alcohol. This is a very common question many people ask. Okay, I get it. You can't get drunk. That's okay, but take a sip. You're not going to get drunk off a sip. Okay, pork. We understand pork. We can't eat it, but then the trichinosis, the disease that you would get from eating pork, that's incidental. There's medicine. Modern medicine has solved that problem of pork. You can eat it without getting that sick and disease. And we oftentimes teach people don't eat pork because it's najis and this animal is evil, but now we have to think a little bit higher. And we're going to go back and visit those two things we just talked about. But there's sins that we understand, and it makes sense to us, and there's sins that we sometimes just follow because we're told, right? And then there's sins that we try to understand on that deeper level. So when it comes to certain sins, and now think about yourself, everybody, including myself, think about the sins that we commit. There's times that we committed a sin and we know it's wrong. You spoke to your parents disrespectfully. You cursed at them. You said something rude. That same night, you're at home, you're in your room, you're like, yeah, I messed up. I know I messed up. Now how do I fix this? And you're scratching your head. But that's a good thing. And that's a very good thing that inside your heart, you know that when you made a mistake, you acknowledged it, and now you're like, okay, I have to fix this. And that's a very good thing that we have. We will all make mistakes. Until the day we leave this dunya, we will make mistakes. And that's one side of it. But then there's a more dangerous type of sin. And this is where shaitan, لَأَقْعُدَنَّهُمْ. This is where shaitan comes in, and you do a sin, but you don't really believe it was a sin. Or you do something wrong, but you don't necessarily agree with it. And you're like, well, I don't really think that makes much sense to me. And examples of that could be that Islam teaches us, for example, when it comes to gender relations, that you're not supposed to shake hands with a woman. You're not supposed to hug women that are not your mahram. To some people, it doesn't make sense to them. Like, obviously I'm not going to commit zina. That's not where I'm going with this. Or perhaps you see something, like we use examples of alcohol. Some people go that far and say, well, I'm not getting drunk off this drop that I'm going to drink. I'm still in my senses. I'm still aware. If I smoke something like this, I'm not actually getting intoxicated. I could still keep my senses. And this is where shaitan comes and employs you. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in 4 different places, again, repetition in the Quran is not by mistake. لا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان. Do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. Shaitan is not going to carry you day one from being a Muslim in the masjid to then worshiping him the same night. It's not going to happen like a snap of finger. It happens gradually. He drags you out slowly and pulls you closer to it, step by step, until you get far away that you don't even realize where you are. Now we go back to what we talked about with pork. I use this as an example for the analogy. When we teach our kids that you cannot eat khinzir, pork is haram for us, yes, there's reasons. It's a najis. This animal is not pure. It's a disgusting animal in the sense that it eats its feces, so on and so forth. But the ulama, they go a little deeper, and they say that this is a blueprint. And listen very carefully. That pork and certain restrictions like it are a blueprint so that we as human beings and Muslims can understand the notion of a boundary, that there are lines that you cannot cross. Some of which we will understand, like we understand you don't go and kill people, that's easy, but then some of which may not make entire sense to us. And that's the idea here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts boundaries for us. And He is all-knowing. He understands greater than we understand. And He puts this framework, these blueprints for us to say that do not cross this boundary. Do not cross this boundary. And He does the same thing. That is all of what the rulings, the ahkam of Islam are, boundaries. You can live with inside of them. And this is what a lot of young people struggle with. Because they say, why is Islam so constricting? Why are there 1,000 things that I'm not allowed to do? And we live in a society, unfortunately, where these very things that we are restricted against is completely okay. Going to McDonald's right now and getting a bacon sandwich, no one is going to say anything to you. They're going to give it to you and ask you for money, move along with life. But we know as Muslims, we can't do that. For high schoolers, you can go to South Brunswick High School. Probably 1/3 of them have boyfriends or girlfriends, and that's completely okay. And there are parents perhaps even encourage it and say it's okay, but that's just different. That's the reality we live in, brothers and sisters. I'm talking to the younger folks here right now. This is the test. This is your fitna and this is your jihad. This is your struggle as living in America as a young Muslim. These are your struggles that you will face. Our parents had different struggles as immigrants or in this country. But the struggles will evolve. It's going to change over time. It's not going to stay the same. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm getting to the point that I really want to get to. What Shaitan does very well is that he takes good inside of you and he misuses it and abuses it. So to the point that you believe in your heart, and this is a very challenging test, that you believe, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing something evil. Why are my parents saying that I'm doing something haram? Why am I a villain in my household? And this is what he is a master of doing, putting this veil over us to believe that we are doing something that is good, and it may have goodness in it. Now, I'm going to use an example. I don't like to use the phrase boyfriend and girlfriend, to be honest. I think it's a little immature. We can talk about relations that are outside of marriage, relationships. Now, truthfully, the reality is in America, then when many parents come and talk about this with counselors or imams and stuff, their biggest fear is what? Of course, zina. And then the opposite story, which is good for people to know, is that when high schoolers and people will come and talk about it, they're like, that's not where my mind's at. This is a friend of mine. This is someone who I'm caring for. I have a relationship with this person. So now we have two parties on different pages here. That's the first thing. But what Shaitan has done is he uses something inside of you, and please listen carefully to this. He uses the love inside of your heart as a man or a woman and misuses it for something that is not love. He takes these feelings, when you are married, to love your spouse, to be affectionate, to buy her flowers, to take her to dinner. These are things that make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. This is charity for your wife or for your husband. But what he does to you is he convinces you that just do it now. You're still doing a good thing. You made her smile. You made him happy outside of marriage. And this, as we know and as we are taught, is outside. Outside of the fold is what is accepted. Those boundaries we talked about, it's not inside the boundary. What he's doing is he's abusing this love inside of you. He's abusing these affectionate feelings inside of you. He's abusing these intentions that I'm just trying to make this person happy. They make me feel good. I'm going through a rough time in life. My parents don't understand who I am. This girl understands who I am. Or this guy understands me. And he's listening to me and he's hearing me out. It's a friendship. And these are the ploys of Shaitan, as we talked about, that he is taking you slowly outside. Slowly. There's no zina here, don't worry. Pulls you out a little bit and gets you to do things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids you from doing. And one by one, these steps continue. And one by one, these steps take you closer. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm going to be very honest. There's multiple sides to this problem. One is on the parent generation and one is on the younger generation. We don't have enough time to go through all of that. And the reality is, and this is a very truthful reality, there are people who in their early 20s will meet their spouse and end up marrying that person. It's very common. It happens. It's very normal in society. And one of the other problems that we have in society is when people in societies earlier, meaning you go back 200-300 years, not even that long, people got married when they were 15, 16, 17. It was very normal. Some of our grandparents actually, perhaps, get married in their teenage years. Today, it's unfathomable, unthinkable. You're not going to get a 19-year-old married in common, in most households, you wouldn't find that. But what's to be understood by that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these feelings and inclinations inside of you. The feeling that you want to care for somebody of the opposite gender, as a man, if you want to care for a woman, as a woman, if you want to care for a man, and if you want the affection of the other, this is a good thing. And I want that to be very clear. This is a good thing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a rahmah, actually, if you have this in your heart. Now, the question is, where does it go? Where does it go? When do you use it? Are you going to follow the guidelines we have of waiting until marriage, the beautiful topic of marriage, and waiting until that time comes for you to express and use these emotions? Or will you allow Shaitan to ploy you into saying use it earlier than it's meant to be used? And that's the whole game right here. It's warding off Shaitan. But to be honest, what we do in our societies, and now I'm talking to the parents for a second, is that we tell our kids, you are not allowed to think about marriage. How dare you? You're 20 years old. Are you kidding? Get your degree. Go become a doctor. Go get your master's degree. You are far too young to be thinking about this. You're talking to a girl. Get out of here. You're no chance. And then comes 23, 24. It's like, when are you getting married? SubhanAllah. This light, the light switch just goes on like that. And then at 25 years old, we have a line of parents out the door to the masjid that I can't get my kids married. SubhanAllah. But then when's the first time you talk to them about it? That's my first question to you. For all the parents who are concerned about their children getting married, when's the first time you talk to your son or daughter about it? when they turn the age that you want, it's not a light switch. It doesn't work like that. These are things that you have to talk to them early in life. When they are teenagers, Allah has already put inside their minds and their bodies, this is a weird reality, but let's talk about it. Let's unpack this. When you were a teenager and you are now baligh, mukallaf, meaning you have to pray, you are now of the age that Islamically you can get married. Now we agree, society doesn't agree with that. But what that means, it's time to talk about it. It's time to discuss it. It's not the most comfortable conversations all the time, but we have to sit down and talk about it. And that way our children and our parents, we close this gap. I think maybe 8 years ago at this point, Imam Shibli and I were driving home from Rutgers, and he just said, I truly believe one of the biggest issues that we have, because we came from a seminar about parenting as well at Rutgers University, and he said the biggest issue is that there's two camps. We have the family camp, meaning the parents, and we have the children's camp. These camps are just getting further away. And that lack of communication that we have between them is what's leading to all of this. It's what's leading to all of these issues. My brothers and sisters, one of the other things that we have to remind ourselves on this same topic that we talked about, of zina, of relationships, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now we're talking about Allah, He has made it very easy for us to get married, and He has made zina very difficult. He has encouraged marriage to the point, there's a story of the Sahaba. Some people say this isn't the story we talk about in the Khutba, but it is from the Sahaba. Some of the Sahaba came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, the rich people are going to be in Jannah before us. They're going to do better than us. And he said, why? Well, they have wealth. They are so much wealthier. They give so much more money in sadaqah and charity. They're just going to be better than us. We're poor. And he goes, first he says, the tasbih you do, the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is your charity. The good deeds you do is charity. These are all charities. And then at the end, he makes some more. No, he says, when you are with your wife and you are being intimate with your wife, that is charity. The Sahaba are like, whoa, what's going on? Wait, you're saying that if I'm with my spouse and I'm just being married with my spouse, and taking care of her and so on and so forth, and interests me, you're saying I get good deeds for that? That's charity? The Prophet ﷺ responds and says, if you were to do the opposite, if you were to do zina, then you would be punished for it, correct? You would have the burden of punishment. So obviously, by doing it in the halal means with your spouse, you get the reward. The Sahaba were amazed. They said, subhanAllah, what a merciful Lord we have. And these are the types of hadiths that we have to remind ourselves, that as a society, when these inclinations in your heart, that when you're seeking that companionship as a teenager, it's not your fault. That's the first thing I want to tell you. It's a part of human nature, and it's a beautiful thing that your heart wants to take care of another heart, that you have love inside of you that you want to share, that you have affection, you want to take care of somebody, you want to make someone feel special. These are beautiful traits that our men in our society need more with their wives, that they truly do. It's a huge problem. And yes, it came a little early. These feelings may have to stay at bay. You have to be patient and wait. But to criminalize these feelings is not the objective. Just remember that shaitan will abuse that feeling. Shaitan will abuse that notion in your heart and those ideas in your mind that I want to be with someone. Your mind will play this on you, and this is because Allah put it inside of us. It's fitrah for us to want a companion. But shaitan will use that and say, well, you're not getting married for 10 years, so, 10 years is a long time. And subhanAllah, we don't talk to our 17-year-olds and say, wait a second, in 5 to 6 years, it's within the reason of possibility. Many people after college, they look for spouses, it's pretty common. And then and again, it's one of those things that I literally spoke to someone and said, listen, you're 19 years old. Within a couple of years, you could talk to your parents about marriage. He goes, oh my God. Literally how to say, he's like, oh my God, really? Right? Marriage? I don't know if I'm ready for marriage. And then he calmed down and he realized, wait a second, it's actually not as far as I think it is. Because what we do is we turn on a light switch. You're 25 now, time to find a wife. Versus saying when they're 17 and 18 years old, start behaving like a man, start behaving like a woman. You're turning into an adult, you're going into society. These things come with time, with grooming, with preparation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand His sunnah and stay closer to it and to guide the youth in our community. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Our brothers and sisters, in closing, just two things I want to recap and highlight. Is again, the concept of good and evil. Understanding the concept of right and wrong. As Muslims, we have to truly dig deeper into the reasons of things. Again, we talked about pork and alcohol. You as a kid, if you have not experienced this, one point in life, someone is going to ask you, well, why don't you drink? Why don't you eat pork? And yes, you can give the answer, and it's not wrong to say it's forbidden in Islam, but you as a human being need to understand in your mind what Allah is doing, that it's a ni'mah from Allah. It's a blessing that Allah has given us boundaries, taught us discipline, control over ourselves, and taken out the hard part of determining what is right and wrong. Allah has made it, it's a blessing from Him that He has given us this blueprint to live inside of. The second point, my brothers and sisters, that we spoke at length about is, again, that these feelings that you have inside you, the goodness of it, and you should be able to understand that when there's love and affection and things that, if you can imagine in a marriage being good, then there's goodness in it. To your spouse, to your husband or wife, these are things that are good inside of you. We see it in the movies all the time. But we see it without any guidance of, are they married or not married? That concept is not there. The institution of marriage, and a topic for another khutbah, is one of the most beautiful and sacred institutions in our religion. It's the most important foundation. There is no ummah if you don't have marriage. There is no continuation if you don't have marriage. You are sitting here as a product of marriage. The beauty of it, the rahman, the love in it, it seems far away, but once you are an adult, meaning you are now praying and you are baligh and you know you're an adult, these are things that you have to now think about and understand and start to unpack. Lastly, my brothers and sisters, there's a dua that I would like to pass on. It's from the Quran, a very special dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us. Shaitan is going to attack you, as we said in the beginning, from every angle. He will come from things that you know are wrong and you will feel guilty. Then he will come from you for things that you know are wrong but may not believe are wrong. And these are, again, tricks of shaitan, the whispers of shaitan. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us a beautiful dua. Rabbi a'udhu bika min hamazat ash-shayateen. Oh Allah, protect me from the whisperings, the misguidance, the luring of shaitan. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّي أَن يَحْضُرُونَ. And Allah, keep me far away from it. Don't let it even come close to me. Read this dua every day. I beg you, read this dua every day. That Allah, protect me from the whisperings of shaitan. Start your day with this dua every day. And keep me far away from it. Don't even let it come near me. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Don't let those footsteps draw me in closer. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us as a community. Allahumma ahdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Ya Allah, we ask you today on this day of Friday, this blessed day, Ya Allah, send peace and blessings upon Sayyidina Muhammad and upon his family. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to put love in our hearts for his sunnah, for his teachings. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to put love in our hearts for that which he has left for us in his teachings and guidance. Ya Allah, for our youth, those who find it difficult to adhere to this deen, Allah, make it soft upon them, easily enter into their hearts and into their minds. Allah, open our minds to understand the wisdoms that you have taught us through this Quran and the Sunnah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect our families. Protect our families, Ya Allah, protect our homes. Fill our homes with nur and rahmah and love. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for our marriages to protect them and strengthen them. For those of our youth who are not married, Ya Allah, make them, groom them to be Muslims that you want us to be, and people who will be good husbands and wives in the future. Allah, put love of marriage in the hearts of our community, which has now begun to abandon it. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect us from all of the fawahish, from all the temptations that shaitan will bring. Ya Allah, you are greater than shaitan. Allow us to overcome the temptations that he has. Allow us to, with you, find strength. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ya Allah, with you we find strength. With you we have power to overcome him. Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make beloved in our hearts this sunnah and your Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أقول قولي هذا وأقيم الصلاة.